What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Another mock draft Monday. We took 1 week off. We should be good to go for the rest of the season. Basically took last week off just because the ADPs weren't updated post-draft. So some players were too high. All of the rookies were just way misranked still because the draft had kind of just been over. But I checked. We should be good to go now. It's using a composite of expert rankings and Yahoo, because Yahoo's default, I believe, is half PPR. And I checked through Yahoo's rankings, and they make a lot of sense. So should be good. Should be the first mock draft where things actually look right. But of course, we go over the news before the mock drafts. And I'm not going to do any news about the draft because I've already made a video about winners and losers from the draft. So this is just news that happened after the draft. Not too many things, and really not that many major things. Just happened yesterday, I guess two days ago for you guys. Dalton signs with the Cowboys. Probably just going to be a backup situation. They're probably just using this for leverage in the Dak Prescott contract situation. But I still think the overwhelmingly likely scenario is that Dak gets a nice contract, gets a long-term contract. It makes too much sense to them just give him the deal. So I still think that's going to happen. The Bears declined Trubisky's fifth-year offer. That is not very surprising. He will be in an open competition with Foles to start the year. I don't know who's going to win that competition. And, of course, we don't know how much of an offseason is going to be. But, I mean, they're not going to give him a fifth-year option if they don't even know if he's going to start for them this year. And fifth-year option for everyone I talk about is not this year but next year. So if someone declines a fifth-year option, they still have a deal for this season. It's just next year they might not. So I'll bring that up again with Fournette. The Steelers are likely to cut back on James Conner's carries. Also not surprising. Anthony McFarland could definitely be a change of pace back. I don't think he has a chance to just take over completely James Conner's role, but I think he could be a change of pace. I also think they have a lot of different players, and there's a very good chance this turns into a committee. So as of right now, I'm avoiding it, and if I am taking one back, it is probably McFarland because you could get him with like the last pick. But pretty much I'm just going to avoid the Steelers at this point until we know a lot more. The Jags declined Fournette's fifth-year option, and they've been trying to trade him. Plus, they also brought in Chris Thompson to play third downs. I'm completely avoiding Fournette. I think his name alone will keep him pretty high in the draft. But at this point, I mean, he's not going to get very many third down looks. You guys know I don't think he's that great. Clearly, the NFL is realizing he's not that great. So I'm avoiding him. We got one update on the Seahawks running backs. So we know Carson and Penny were both injured last season. They expect Carson to be ready for week 1, and they expect Penny to open the season on the PUP, which means he will be out for the first 6 weeks, I believe, of the season at a minimum. And they said it's more than just an ACL tear, more than just a normal ACL tear. The Seahawks are always just like overly positive on their players. So if they're saying this about Penny, it means he's opening on the PUP. He might be out for more than that. So definitely good news for Carson, and you just obviously cannot draft Penny right now. The Colts are clearly in love with Pittman. There's been a lot of things that have come out. I'm sure most of the fantasy community is going to realize how much they love him. They've compared him to Vincent Jackson. They say they think he could be the best wide receiver in this class. It was a really good class. I'm expecting him to be used very similarly to Mike Williams. Going to have a very high touchdown ceiling, even as a rookie. Going to be on the field a lot, and he's just a really good late-round target, hoping that he doesn't get hyped too high in the draft. Miles Sanders entrenched as the Eagles running back 1. Not surprising. That's what we've been talking about all offseason. I love Sanders. They didn't draft anyone. Like they had, I believe it was 10 or 11 picks. Not a single running back. It's just him and Boston Scott. So I absolutely love Sanders. And then last one, Steelers offensive coordinator said Claypool is going to play mostly wide receiver. We thought that he might be playing tight end. If he does play mostly wide receiver, that's good news for Juju because we know Juju is much better in the slot, and that would just increase his role in the slot. But obviously, this is just news that actually came out very early in the season, so don't look too much into it. There's still a chance Claypool plays some wide receiver or some tight end, but they're saying he's going to play wide receiver. Also thinking it's going to increase the chance that Juju's is not on the Steelers. Like if they view him as a wide receiver, we know how much they love their other wide receivers they took early recently. There's a pretty good chance Juju plays for a different team next season. So keep an eye on that. It's not going to impact anything for season long, but it's definitely a possibility. We're going to go over the poll we took last mock draft. So at the end of the last mock draft, I said, would you rather have the Kenyon Drake Jefferson pairing or Godwin and Tony Pollard? And 53% of you said Drake and Jefferson. I think that's the correct move as well. And I put on the right here the rest of the roster, because I think when you're talking about like going running back early versus running back wide receiver, or wide receiver running back, I guess we would be, you need to consider what the rest of your team looks like. So given that we also had Josh Jacobs, Marlon Mack, of course this was a draft that happened before the draft, so that wouldn't have been as good of a pick. Kareem Hunt and Clyde Edwards-Helaire were the other running backs. And then for the other wide receivers, we had Thielen, Metcalf, Chark, Lamb, Ross. My take is that you guys picked this one right. I don't think you need Godwin when you have Thielen, Metcalf, Chark, Lamb. Like, you've got enough wide receivers there to definitely get by. You don't need Godwin and having Lamb as your wide receiver 5. Like, you just don't need that. Whereas I just want to have more depth at running back. So having Drake, Jacobs, and Clyde, I think is a really good trio. So I think that's the correct move. And I bet you if I put that poll out now, given where Jefferson landed, and given, I mean, of course, we know that everyone's going to like Lamb a little bit more than they did when I did that mock draft. I think it would be more than 53%. But I think you guys got that one right. So running back gets 1 point up on wide receiver running back, and that would have been like the second round pick. So, only thing we're going to change in this mock draft is the roster. So we're going to do half PPR from the 8 pick. Haven't done that one yet. But we're going to do what my money league is. So it's pretty much the same as everything else. Not a big change. You've got your 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, tight end, quarterback. Defense, no kicker. Only 5 bench spots, not 6. The flex spot, and then there's 1 extra running back / wide receiver. So you do have the option of starting 4 running backs and 2 wide receivers, or going 4 wide receivers, 2 running backs. It just increases flexibility if you're in the draft and you're like, listen, I'm not liking my spot at any of these wide receivers. I just want to keep hammering running back. You're more inclined to be like, that's totally fine, because you can start 4 running backs. Same thing with wide receiver. If you hate the value at running back, but you love all these wide receivers, well, you can start 4 of them every week. That means you could start out with like 5 wide receivers to start off a draft. Probably would still shy away from doing that. That'd be a little extreme. But it increases flexibility in the draft. And I kind of like it. I wish we'd go to like 7 bench spots, but we only have 5. So we're going to start the mock draft, and we're going to do the new setup, which I love. If anyone watches this video and worked on the new setup for, if you guys don't know, it's Fantasy Pros. I really like it. So it's a lot better than last season's, in my opinion. So we're the 8 pick. McCaffrey, Zeke, Barkley, Michael Thomas, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon. I'll say it again. I've said it before. I feel like this trio of running backs is kind of first. We've got Michael Thomas, obviously the best wide receiver. Dalvin Cook, Kamara, really like them. Once you get to 7, that's kind of where it's like you're picking from a lot of players that are very similar. So if you do get to pick, top 6 picks are pretty good. But once you hit this one, like your Derrick Henry and your Josh Jacobs are pretty close to each other. Of course, we know Adams and Hopkins are in kind of that upper tier of wide receiver. So it's not like super important to me which one I get. So if you're not going to get a top 6 pick, maybe going later in the first round is better. Because I mean, I don't really care with this one too much. This is my draft. I would consider Adams here, just because we look at the draft and them just not taking any wide receivers obviously means they're going to go much more run heavy, right? Excuse me. So they get Dillon. They already have Jamal Williams. They already have Aaron Jones. They want to run the ball a ton. Thing is, they don't need to throw the ball that much for Adams to just be locked into his targets. I mean, it's only Allen Lazard there to take targets away from him. They don't have like tight ends that are taking targets away. Of course, they can throw to running backs, but it's Adams. It's Adams every single play. He's going to be absolutely dominant. So I did adjust the rankings. I think Hopkins and Adams were much closer to go into the NFL draft. Adams is pretty clearly ahead of Hopkins at this point. So only Adams at wide receiver, not looking at tight end, not looking at quarterback, and it would really just come down to Hunter Henry or Jacobs. Now, Adams will not be there at our next pick. I believe that there's a chance that not Henry, but Jacobs could be there. But even if he's not there, I think that one of Drake, Sanders, and Eckler will be. And I view that downgrade as not that big from Jacobs. So I think I would prefer to take Adams here, and then we'll just see which running back's available at our next pick. So Henry goes, Chubb goes. Honestly, it was too fast for me. I'll have to look here. Okay, so we took Adams. Henry, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, then a run on wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, Hopkins, Julio, then Eckler and Drake. So we will get Josh Jacobs. Really like that falling to us. Although I think this was the correct move because I would have been fully happy taking Miles Sanders with that pick. And honestly, I would have considered Clyde. I'm very interested to see what people do as far as Clyde is concerned. I do think he's going to be a mid-second round pick. I think that's just what you're going to have to spend to get him. And I do think that's viable, but I definitely want to see more reports. Oh, I should hide the drafted players. I want to see more reports. It's going to stink not having like probably any sort of training camp, maybe a modified preseason. For people asking, I do think there is going to be a season. There's a lot of different contingencies that they have out there. Shortening preseason, going to Saturday and Sunday games, and just moving back the start of the season a little bit. There's a lot of things they can do. Obviously, we don't know anything right now, but I think the most likely outcome is just games with no fans. I think that's just most likely. But having that said, I think offseason is going to be very much reduced, and so maybe we don't get as many reports as we once did on these rookies, which just increases the risk with them. And of course, we like to avoid risk in the first few rounds. So, not going to go over every player every single round, but we get Kelsey and Kittle going off the board. Lamar Jackson's the only quarterback that goes off the board. Clyde Taylor and Fournette go, and there was a run at wide receiver with Godwin, Evans, Odell, Golladay, DJ Moore, Allen Robinson, and Amari Cooper all coming off the board. So, we already have, if we look at our team on the right here, Jacobs Adams, a really, really strong start. Two players we know will be very involved in the offense. So we're looking for in the first 4 rounds. We need to be 100% sure these dudes are going to be very involved. And we know everyone's already talented, so we don't need to really consider talent in the first 4 rounds. At running back, we have the option of Gurley, Chris Carson. That's it. It would come down to Gurley and Carson. I don't think there's a case for anyone else. I guess there's a small case for Bell and David Johnson, but not ahead of Gurley and Carson. Tight end, I think everyone has basically come off that we would have considered. Definitely not any of those guys. Quarterback, we're not touching quarterback early. There are too many guys late. So it's basically, do we take Chris Carson or do we take a wide receiver? Our wide receiver options are Juju, Kupp, A.J. Brown, Adam Thielen, Sutton, Parker, Ridley. A lot of guys I love. Really, really, really strong picks there. We don't have many picks. It's only 8. So my lean here is that I just listed off a lot of wide receivers I'm very comfortable with. And there are a lot that I think will also be available in the round after that I like a lot. Can't say the same thing in my confidence level for these running backs. And since I did spend a first round pick on Adams, we're lacking at the running back position. So I think it is more valuable to our team, how we have it right now, to take Carson, pair him with Jacobs, and just be confident in those two. Would still like to lock up another back that I'm comfortable with, just because, I mean, it drops off a lot. Uh, so there are still some wide receivers I really like. Sutton, you guys know I poo-pooed him a little bit in a video. I think it was the winners and losers video, because, I mean, of course he's a loser from the draft. Like, you can't really argue that. I don't think he's a bad pick, and I think his ADP is dropping because of the draft, so you're just getting him at a discount. I don't know enough about how that target share is going to look to feel confident spending an early fourth round pick. Like, I don't know how much more they're going to use Noah Fant, and I don't know how much. Lindsey and Gordon are really good receiving backs. How much are they going to have in the receiving game? Probably a lot more than the total was for last season. So even bringing in, 15th pick, taking a wide receiver, like, that's pretty early for a wide receiver. We know we get Hamler in the third or fourth round. So I don't know. I don't know enough about the split to feel confident in that. So our options are Parker, who was a huge winner from the draft, and Calvin Ridley. We can also consider like that Chark, Hilton, Metcalf, McLaurin range, but that's the range I was saying might be available at our next pick. So for me, it's Parker or Ridley. Then at running back, really no running backs got taken. So we could take basically Gordon, Bell, DJ. I don't feel fantastic about any of those guys. Of course, David Johnson is going to be pretty involved in the offense. I just don't know how effective he'll be, and he's going to have a massively reduced role in the receiving game from what we're used to. So I don't love that in the fourth round. And like I said earlier, we've got these 4 flex spots, essentially. One's not a tight end eligible, but you're not using a tight end in your flex anyway. So we've got 4, wide receiver eligible spots. Because of that, I think we can just start hammering out wide receivers if we feel good about them. So basically it comes down to, do I want Parker or Ridley? I think that is extremely close. I genuinely don't know who I have in the rankings. I think if I had to say who do I feel more confident in not busting, the answer is obviously Ridley. Right? I mean, because Parker has been in this situation before. Obviously, they're invested in him. But who's not going to bust? I mean, Ridley's not going to bust, right? Like, there's just no way Ridley busts unless he gets hurt. But you say that for anyone. So I'm going to take Ridley, especially with all these targets opening up with Hooper leaving. I know they bring in Hayden Hurst, but like, he's not taking all of Hooper's targets. So I feel pretty good about that pick. We look at running back, it is just getting decimated. We have some really nice options. So we could take Mostert. That's not a bad pick, although 5th round, and they've already said it's probably going to be a committee. Akers, but we can't feel confident how many touches he's going to get. Hunt, you guys know I like Hunt as a flex option, but I don't love taking flex options in the 5th round. Vaughn has a lot of upside. They've come out and said they love his just 3-down skill set. I think it's very likely he just takes over Ronald Jones' role completely. But how confident am I in that? Probably not 5th round confident, maybe 6th or 7th round confident. And then you just look after that, and the question marks all keep popping up. So I think we go wide receiver. I just think there is actually a drop at the wide receiver. Hilton, Metcalf, McLaurin, I think are a tier, and Debo are a tier above everyone else, and I would like to get one of them. I really like Metcalf. Problem is, we already took Carson on this team, and although it's fine to take a running back and a wide receiver, if it's so close, and I think it is really close, I think you shy away from it. I think McLaurin is the play here. I'm not going to fault anyone for taking Hilton, Metcalf, or McLaurin. I just think McLaurin is a very good receiver, and they didn't bring in too much competition for him. So I think that's the play. Debo's still on the board. So that's interesting. Let's look at our team. So we've got Jacobs and Carson At running back, we've got Adams, Ridley, McLaurin at wide receiver. Okay. So we don't need to take any specific position. We can look at tight end, Henry, Ingram, Higbee. No, I mean we're just gonna wait. There's so many options at tight end. Tight end is so deep this season. We can look at that tier of Prescott and Murray, but I think you're more looking at that tier in like the 7th round. I don't think you should do it in the 6th. This is basically your last chance in the 6th round to get these players you feel pretty confident in. I think after this, there's a lot more question marks with every pick. There's definitely no number ones available. There is a few number one receivers. So Debo's, of course, the number one in San Fran, although, I mean, number one wide receiver. I guess Kittle would be the one. I'm not taking Edelman until, like, Stidham's not the quarterback. I mean, you can, but he's just going to be so consistently okay for your team. Like, he's going to get you, like, 10 every week. And it's, like, fine, but I don't know. That's not winning you anything. Although, I mean, I guess 10 points at my wide receiver 4 spot's not the worst. We've got Debo, Hollywood, and Fuller, I think, are your options there. At running back, we could go with Montgomery. Nothing's changed from that situation from last season, and he got a boatload of touches like we said he would. The offense was just dreadful, and we know there's a 0% chance the offense can get any worse, right? I mean, are the Bears going to be worse than they were last season? I mean, is that even possible? So give him a full season, because he didn't actually start out as the guy. Like, they always do that weird thing in Chicago, where it's like first week they give it to some scrub, and then they're like, okay, we'll give it to the running back we like. I don't know why they do that. But maybe Foles improves this offense. And if they improve at all, I mean, Montgomery already got a bunch of touches. So I think Montgomery is the pick here. But if you didn't want to go that, it's the two I already mentioned. It's Hunt and it's Keyshawn Vaughn. But I'm totally fine taking Montgomery there. Is he going to be a post-hype sleeper this year? It's possible. I mean, 6th round, I'll take that for starting running back. Team again. So we have technically filled out the spots, although it would be like a weekly matchup thing for those 2 flex spots. But for running back, we've got Jacobs, Carson, and Montgomery. And then for wide receiver, Adams, Ridley, and McLaurin. Feel really good about that start. Both of the mid-round quarterback targets are gone. Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott are off the board, which means we are just waiting until the very end of the draft to take quarterback. And we're very likely doing that for tight end as well. I do not see a case for taking any of these guys in the middle rounds when there are a million options late. So basically for the next 5 or 6 rounds, we're going to be taking running backs and wide receivers, although we also need to remember only 5 bench spots here. So next 5 picks, we're going to take running back and wide receiver. Then we're going to look at quarterback and tight end after that, and then we'll take our defense. I'm really not sure what the option is going to be. I think it's going to be another wide receiver running back comparison in this one, because I didn't see a single point in this draft where I even considered taking tight end or quarterback. So we're probably gonna have to compare running backs and wide receivers again, although I'll try not to do like 1st and 2nd round. Maybe we'll do something else. So running back, we can take a shot on Geis. Really tough to know how Geis is going to be involved in the offense, because he's played I don't know the number of games, but he's played less than a full season over his first 2 seasons for sure, just from all these injuries. But we know dude's awesome. Dude's incredible when he gets on the field. Can he get on the field? We know Lindsey's a backup. I mean, we know everyone on those list is a backup at this point. Because it is so bad right now, I think we kind of have to take one. And you guys know, 5th round on, it's upside. I don't want to take a running back here that I don't feel like James White. Even though he's going to get me points every week, I don't want to take one that doesn't have upside. And if I'm only shooting for upside with this pick, I think you basically have to go with Geis. Of course, like I said, the injury history is concerning, but this is the 7th round, and he's the only running back basically left that just has a fairly clear path to being a running back 1 in fantasy. We can consider taking another one. I don't think there's going to be any people down here. You could take Raquel Armstead late and just say, hey, maybe Fournette does get traded because Raquel will be the guy. but you would need that to happen, and late would be like 12th round, not 8th round. So your options. You go with Sony, who is still the lead back, although Harris could get extra snaps. We don't know how good the offense is going to be with Stidham, although I honestly don't expect much of a downgrade in offense. Just I think a lot more is going to shift towards a running game, which actually is probably a good thing for Sony. So your option is him. You could take Latavius Murray for upside if Alvin Kamara got injured. You could take Tony Pollard upside if Zeke gets injured. Boston Scott if Miles Sanders goes down. Basically, we're in handcuff range. I don't see anyone that's really going to take anyone. Evans could be a satellite back in Tennessee if you want to go after that. McFarland that we talked about earlier in the video. But these are all backups. And when you consider Sony Michel, at least right now, he's not a backup. Right now, he's a lead running back that could get a lot of touches. I know he's got the knee issues, but that's more of his career from a career standpoint. So I'm not touching him in Dynasty. But for 1 year in the 8th round, that's not a bad pick. We're probably good at running back at this point. And I think that was smart because you could argue just wait until that last round and take a handcuff. But we've grabbed Jacobs, Carson, and Montgomery. We're going to get a boatload of touches this season. And then we've just taken Geis and Sony, who both have a very clear path to a boatload of touches this season. And everyone that we picked is also the goal line back. So everyone that we have on our team right now has a lot of carry upside, not necessarily reception upside for everyone, although a few of them do, and then they all have touchdown upside. So feel good about that, but we also only have Adams, Ridley, and McLaurin wide receiver. So we do need to take wide receiver for the next 4 picks. Justin Jefferson, I love. I think he's very talented. I think he's going to play every snap. He's going to get a lot of snaps in the slot, which he's best at. Not only a slot receiver, but he's best at that. And we know that Cousins will lock into 2 targets. So Jefferson, love that pick. Deontay Johnson, I love. Preston Williams, we missed out on Parker taking Ridley, but Preston Williams also was a big winner from the draft. Jalen Reagor, absolutely love him. Pittman, of course, we went over. Mims, I love. So definitely, this wide receiver class was just so incredible. And there's going to be so many great late round picks because of it. I was really hoping we get Johnson at that pick. That's unfortunate. And I honestly think I would take Reagor ahead of Preston Williams. But we're basically just going to take all the wide receivers we like here. I just think Reagor's going to be used on a ton of screens, ton of design plays. He's really, really good. And I was praying that a team took him early because he's got that 95th percentile breakout age. And when you compare that with high draft capital, it is the number 1 indicator of success in the NFL. And also going to a team that's willing to air it out. I mean, it was perfect. It was so perfect. I'm taking him. Last receiver, that would just come down to Pittman, Mims, and Harry, and I guess Higgins, and Lazard. I guess those would be your options. I think Mims would be the guy. I don't think there's a huge difference between Mims and Pittman, but you guys know I said Mims was my favorite wide receiver coming out of the class. I know I just said I loved Reagor, I loved Jefferson, but Mims talent-wise was my favorite. And he goes to the Jets where, I mean, Darnold doesn't care half the time. He'll just throw the ball out there on the edge, and that's where Mims is really good. So I think that is a really good, I guess, scheme fit, you could say. We probably should have taken a look at the quarterbacks and stuff, just because we could have waited. But it doesn't look like we'll have to because a boatload is still there. So you guys know I said avoid Aaron Rodgers. I do think that in these simulations, he'll be available in this 11, 12, 13 round range. I do not believe in your hometown leagues he will be. So that's kind of why I said he's on the do not draft list, just because people in your hometown leagues are going to see Aaron Rodgers available in the 11th round, and they're going to be like, wow, this is just incredible value. You look at the computer system, he's the 86th overall player. We're at pick, I don't even know, 137. So it's like a 50 round value. No one would let that go, or at least 11 people aren't going to let that go in your hometown league. But I mean, I have Stafford ranked ahead of him anyways. And you could even consider Joe Burrow ahead of him. So I think Stafford is a very, very elite late round pick this season. He was phenomenal before getting injured last season. There's no reason to expect that to change. If anything, their offense should be just as good, if not better, than it was. So I really like him. And then we've basically just got tight end, where all of our favorite picks are still on the board. Goddard, Gesicki, Hawkinson, Jonnu Smith, Blake Jarwin is getting way undervalued this season for what he's going to do. So I was honestly planning on taking Jarwin the 13th, but I mean, you're looking at Gesicki and Goddard with this pick. I do have Goddard ahead of Gesicki. Wouldn't fault anyone for taking Gesicki ahead of him. And then all we got is the defenses, which I have not done any research on, unfortunately. But of course, the Patriots. I'm a Patriots fan, so we're going to take them. We get the B. We never look at the rankings for anything. But there it is. Starting lineup would depend on matchups, but how they have it. Stafford, Josh Jacobs, Chris Carson, Devonta Adams, Calvin Ridley, Dallas Goedert, Terry McLaurin, David Montgomery and the Patriots, and then our bench, Darius Geis, Sony Michel, Jefferson, Rager, and Mims. So a lot of the rookie wide receivers, but I took the ones who had the best landing spot. Going to Minnesota, phenomenal. Going to the Eagles, phenomenal. Going to the Jets, phenomenal. Those were three of the teams that we really wanted wide receivers to go to. And then, of course, the Packers, who didn't take anyone, which is why we took Adams. So I really like that team. What could have we done differently? I said I didn't want to really touch these first two rounds. So maybe something in the middle round. So it went this way. No, I wasn't considering anything at the McLaurin pick. Let's do the Ridley pick. So I guess I was considering going with one of these running backs at that pick. Honestly, I was probably leaning Bell if I was going to take anyone, but it would be like Bell / Melvin Gordon. So would you rather take Calvin Ridley and another late round? I guess we should do running back. Calvin Ridley. Let's pull this up. Ridley and Sony. Or would you rather go with Bell, and then who could have I taken instead of Sony at the wide receiver position in this round? CeeDee Lamb. So there it is. Calvin Ridley and Sony Michel, or Le'Veon Bell and CeeDee Lamb. For those who haven't heard a take on Lamb, I really like his talent. Wasn't like the perfect landing spot. I want him to go to the Jets. But realistically, they lost, 163 or 166 targets when Witten and Cobb left. So there's easily 100 targets left available for him. And they can support, I'm moving Gallup more up the rankings because they can support Cooper, Lamb, and Gallup. There's going to be a boatload of touchdowns to go around. Of course, they also have Zeke and they have Jarwin. So there's a lot of touchdowns, but there's a lot of players to get those touchdowns. But I think that's really good value for Lamb where he was going right now. I think I have my take. I don't want to influence the vote, so I'll give my take in the next mock draft. But I'll post this again to Twitter, and I'll do the same thing with the team because I do think it's pretty important that you see the rest of the running backs and wide receivers when considering which one you take. So that is the end of this video. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.